Welcome viewers, welcome to another MTV Community Forum. I'm your host Byron Campbell, and wherever you are on Facebook, on YouTube, on MTV, wherever you are, welcome and good evening. Chris, good evening.
Good evening, Byron, and welcome to our viewers and listeners as well. It's a pleasure to be here again.
What kind of program we have this evening, Chris? What can you tell our viewers about it?
Well, we have an unusual twist this evening. I am going to be the guest this evening. Byron is going to drill me. We're talking budget 2025, budget 2026, and kind of forecasting what we think may or may not happen.
But of course, Chris, in this first section of our program, we're going to be touching on what's happening in the region vis-a-vis the military buildup in the Caribbean. But let me start with this first, Chris. I want to go to the UN. Because, you know, for 33 years, consistently, this vote of the UN, which deals with the question of the ending the economic, commercial, and financial embargo imposed by the US against Cuba, happened again last week, you know, and it's interesting again, overwhelmingly, 165 in favor of ending the embargo, telling the U.S. that it's time to end it, against 7 against, and you imagine Israel and Argentina and Ukraine. These are the countries that are supporting the U.S. on this. But interestingly, we had 12 abstention. But for 33 years, overwhelmingly, the majority of nations in the world have been voting in the UN, denouncing the U.S. embargo on Cuba because of the hurt that is taking place on the nation.
Yeah, and sometimes it leaves you to question the power and the validity of the UN and what happens. It's almost like, you know, it's a PR stunt.
Yeah.
We do the vote, we get the majority votes, but nothing happens because the US has veto power and some of its allies and so on. So you could have 163 and 7.
65, yeah.
Yeah, and you can't get it moved. You know, and the US will use their power in the various quarters, financial and economic, and stifling this. They have been stifling these people for what, decades?
Yeah, long time.
But yet still the Cubans are resilient enough to rise above it and continue to operate, albeit not in the best fashion, and they're struggling in various areas. So, you know, in this world, might rule. Unfortunately, that's how it is. And the UN and them supposed to be there as a impartial adjudicator, but that doesn't work.
They don't have the power because these resolutions are resolutions. It's a position, but the U.S., of course. Chris, there's an interesting development. You know that citrus in Grenada, the propagating station ceased propagating citrus for the past over 5 years now, maybe 6, 7 years, as far as I'm aware. And the reason for this is that we have a disease called citrus greening disease that, I mean, it's decimated cultivations in the U.S. in particular and around the world, and certainly we have been affected here. In fact, all of Maribor varieties were infected, and that's happening around the island. So that's a problem. Previous government had made some investment to bring in new varieties, but that never happened. But there's some interesting development that we learned that that good news coming out of Florida, that scientists are using genes from another plant and putting them in certain varieties of the oranges to develop citrus plants that can fight this disease. So we're saying there's hope, but clearly that's a major issue facing the world, certainly facing tropical countries that, like us, that are producing citrus.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's good news to hear that they're finding something. But then, you know, once you engage in genetic manipulation and splicing, you always wonder about the medium to long-term effect it's going to have on the fruit or have on the plant or even have on the consumers when the fruits come out. Because these genes, this genetic manipulation doesn't stay with only one aspect of the fruit. So, you know, it worries you that you're doing it, yes, in the short term, it seems to be happy and working, but you don't know in the long term.
But it's still experimental now, of course, you know. But
and in citrus need pollination. Next minute, a bee coming and pollinating citrus because of what they think,
exactly.
or what they get in, the vibes they get in.
It's true. Chris, I call it war in the region. Of course, we have we have different aspects of it. Of course, we know of the continued militarization of the region. We know that the U.S. has dispatched its largest aircraft carrier, the USS Gerald Ford, with over 70 bombers, and we have nuclear submarines, and so and that's immediately around us. Attached to that, of course, and we'll explore all of this, Chris, for a while. We have the request from the United States military, Grenada, to deploy to Iraq raiders in Grenada. So, Chris, let's just discuss a bit what developments that we have on this matter. Let's start first within the Parliament, because that's important. We've had this request now for us since August. We learned about it by chance because they
put out a release.
But the release only came out after news media got a story. It was not voluntary. So we learned by chance. This is why I say that. And so we were told that the government is considering it, blah, blah, blah. However, in Parliament, the Prime Minister made a statement of it. He talked about not breaking the request is in. He talked about the fact that the timeline that was given for a response had passed. They continue to work on it. They continue to consider the legal, that is not breaking any legal laws and any international laws also. But they are concerned about more, so they focus more on the legal and the technical aspects of it. He also reported that the United States, the military identified 2 locations in Point Saline. And from that 2 locations, they had selected 1, so that means they were here and they looked at it and decided what they wanted, But what do you understand, Chris, by the technical and legal consideration? Is it reasonable that after 3 months we are nowhere? That the government cannot decide. We've heard CARICOM's statement on the zone of peace. We've had individual governments talking about the zone of peace. Of course, we know what Trinidad's position has been and what is building up. But what's your take on it so far in terms of these developments?
Let me say this. I think the government is taking its time is not a bad thing.
Yeah.
In the sense that here we are with all this militarization in the area.
Yeah.
And we need to understand that this positioning of a terrestrial radar on our soil, whether it's in which part in Point Saline, to me, doesn't help the military success of what the U.S. is trying to do here. They have AWACS, they have planes that fly 30,000, 40,000 feet above. Drones, they have satellites, and they have their own ships with their own radar equipment and capabilities. So I don't think all the satellite in Point Saline is of any major help to the military thing that they want to do.
Yeah.
So that's one. Secondly, I think the government taking its time on decisions like that is something that needs to happen. Remember, this is a new government, young, and they need experienced people to help them negotiate around it, considering the technical aspects, the security aspects, and all else what happens. For us, is economic issues. Fishing, what is happening in the fishing industry, what is going to happen to tourism if we locate this thing where they have requested. So there's a lot of implications for us to understand. So I am in support of the Prime Minister and his government taking their time, because in my little understanding, whether I say yea or nay, you can't win this, right? Yea will say have implications, no will have implications. So probably the best thing for us is to take your time. If Mr. Trump decides he wants to go.
Chris, let me take you on this take your time thing, because I'm not going there at all. I have a problem with the process. Here's the thing, that a request comes in. The first consideration is the policy one, the zone of peace question. And I want to go there a little bit, Chris, because we hear about the zone of peace, and what do we understand by this? And let's spend a minute on this, Chris. That in 1941, during the World War, Britain gave Chaguaramas to the United States to set up a military base. This is during World War. During the time of the Federation, this is between 1958 and 62, the question of a capital for the Caribbean Associated States came up, and it was decided that that capital would be in Chaguaramas. So there was pressure then by the Trinidad government, so the Americans had to leave, and that's what really happened. But the zone of peace then came up at the United Nations when I think it was in 1978 that the UN passed a resolution asking various zones and regions to consider zones of peace and why, and therefore, and the Caribbean, interestingly, came out at the UN and said, yes, we want, so Grenada, in fact, co-sponsored a resolution at the OAS in 1979, interesting, a latter part of 1979, and that was, of course, Maurice Bishop. And it's from that time that the Caribbean, essentially through the OAS, all the countries determined that the Caribbean should be a zone of peace. And they gave very clear reasons why it should be. So there was a buy-in into this, you know. So that, for me, should be the first consideration. If the Caribbean is a zone of peace, then you cannot give consideration to establishing military raiders on your island and encouraging or aligning yourself with a military bloc, the United States, to wage war in another country, because that's clearly the intention. It's not about narco-trafficking, you know. So given the time, you know, the philosophical and fundamental issue should be, do we want a zone of peace? Do we want to be aligned? That should be determined. If you start thinking about the legal aspect and the technical aspect, well, that comes when you're given a decision to determine where it's going to be and what's going to happen.
Yeah, but
what's the time about?
In international foreign developments and negotiations, it never is as straightforward as that.
True.
It's never black and white.
True.
You have deals cut in the rooms, closed off from the public and closed off from the eyes of the general consensus.
Yeah.
So sometimes what is being considered is so significant or not for the country that they need to be careful how they negotiate around it.
Yeah.
And whether you say definitively for the zone of peace, it's no, but if take away the zone of peace from the argument and say something else, what is going to happen? Understanding how the U.S. is now operating and how we depend on the U.S. for so much things economically, security, and otherwise that we get from that and that thing, from the U.S. as a partner. So you as a leader, in my view, have to be clear on what to consider. Next minute I say yes, or I say no, and the U.S. decides to implement an embargo on us. We can't go to the UN and fight it, because the UN is a useless instrument for raising embargoes. I just said, Cuba is a good example.
Yeah.
So how would a small developer, a SID like us, fight something like that?
This is why we are part of a region. We're part of CARICOM.
So the region is saying we want to be a zone of peace. And
so Grenada should therefore take that position and be, because we're part of a region.
They have not said they didn't take that position.
But why is it taking over 3 months, 90 days?
Because you need to examine everything in detail.
But let's examine it, because look what's happening right now, Chris. As we talked about, in fact, the militarization, that we have these huge battleships. We have, look, fishers are afraid to go out in the ocean. Yeah. Airlines, America has already designated a part of the Caribbean as a no-flying zone for commercial airlines. Yeah. What's happening in Trinidad? What are you picking up from Trinidad?
Yeah, well, they have started deploying jamming of communication. So radars are being jammed and normal communications is being jammed. Yes. Yeah. In recent discussions, pilots who use our region will tell you in Trinidad, the jamming is affecting them coming into Trinidad and leaving Trinidad. When you get out of the space, then it comes back normally. The further north you go. So they are using certain things to jam, and that is obvious. If you're trying to get regime change in Venezuela, you want to jam their communications equipment so that they can't talk and they're weaker for it. So that's a normal strategy they have used. So it is happening in that sense. What we don't know is how the American government plans to do what they want to do, whatever it is they want to do, and what kind of military assets they're going to use. And we are so close in the southern area. Is that radar that they want us to put in going to intercept a missile that gets loose from if they start using missiles and drones? We don't know. And it will put, even though we say we are a zone of peace and we're not supporting anybody to go and do regime change or whatever they want to do.
That should be the
right?
underlying factor.
Yeah, but that shouldn't influence the decision here on A. That should be one consideration.
Yeah.
There are many others. And there's nothing wrong in such an important issue in taking your time. I see nothing wrong with that.
Chris, you look, to me, we undecided. We look, we don't know where we're going, what we're doing. There's delay, there's uncertainty. The public is scared. There's a lot of people I speak to are worried about, they see it as an emergency. Right. Should I stock up? Is there a war coming?
In any negotiation, there will be pluses and minuses, pros and cons.
Yeah.
And if we, whatever cons may come based on whatever decision we make or don't make, we have to be prepared to deal with it and understand how it's going to affect our people and how we're going to offset it. Because here we're heading into Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
If this thing starts, it's going to have shipping come into the country.
That's correct.
Based on how it's going to happen.
Yes.
How do we get food to come in and other things to come into our country? Do we use a different route? What is going to happen?
So that's what I'm saying. There's a war coming.
Yes, so that's the point.
Yeah, that's the point.
Our government needs to be clear.
So are we facilitating this war by allowing the installation of military radar? That's the consideration.
Well, of course, and
that's
there is consequences for it.
Exactly. So
whichever way you go.
In my view, there should be no consideration for the installation of a military radar in Grenada because we're making ourselves a target.
That is fine. That's your position.
So that, for me, is the fundamental part. We know how the U.S. operate. We know they are for regime change in Venezuela. There is a war. We have an estimate of the cost of what is costing the U.S. every day for this military battalion.
In excess of $10 million a day.
A day. That's the point. So it's not by chance, And we know, for example, it's all about oil. We know that it's about the oil, that the geopolitical aspect. That is it. America is not in the region or building her military might around us to fight terrorists. That's a joke. We all know that. And the Americans are themselves saying that. I mean, it's not by chance that the head of the Southern Command, Horsley, was set aside, was moved aside because
he resigned.
Well, he resigned. Come on.
Or retired, whatever it is.
I mean, come on.
Yeah, but he wasn't different. It wasn't different to their opinions.
Exactly. That's the point. That's the point.
But Byron, at the end of the day,
at the end of the day,
we could go backward and forward on this.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, it is not an easy decision for any government, and they have singled out Grenada.
Yes.
Right? And when you look at it, the radar is not a necessity for the U.S. to do what they have to do. So the singling out of Grenada to locate and says there is other things in the background that needs to be considered. Hence, we need to take our time.
Well, that's your opinion, Chris. That's fine. We'll move on with that. The other thing I want to mention here, Chris, is that the Jamaica, of course, Melissa, the hurricane, bad. The good thing about it, Chris, that it did, the information coming in is that 30 to 40% of the island damaged, but the more eastern part of the island, western part of the island is okay.
No, it's where the bad damage.
It's bad where damage.
Yeah.
So south and east, precisely.
Okay.
So that's a good thing because they can resupply and so on. But still, Jamaica had catastrophic insurance, and so they're going to be. The finance minister was saying that they would be able to access close to $820 million US. So that's good resources coming in to help rebuild the places that are damaged. Of course, it's going to cost a lot more billions, but this is an important development, and it shows the importance of having this coverage. What they call it, cat bond triggered, in case the parameters, in case the wind speed.
Yeah, because this is a Cat 5, Cat 4, Cat 5.
Cat 4,
so 5, trigger that kind of,
So that's an excellent thing there for them. The other thing, Chris, I heard that the Eastern Caribbean CBI Regulatory Authority headquarters would be established in Grenada. Mm-hmm. So that's a positive thing because when you look at the Eastern Caribbean, we have no headquarters. We don't have civil aviation. We don't have fisheries. We don't have. So for the first time, we are having
I think that is a testimony to the fact that our CBI program is well run. It's well respected. When you look at the other CBIs in Dominica and the issues they have had in Antigua and so on, we have not had the same
thing.
So we have a good administration of the program here. We have good security checks and processes that we engage in. And we have good compliance.
So that's good. That's good.
So that's a good thing.
Chris, the state of the parliament. Last week, of course, we had this episode in the parliament where, we spoke about it already, but the parliament was rescheduled for this Wednesday. The opposition party, the opposition in the House, and notice to the House telling them that they won't be attending the session yesterday and also the session tomorrow in the upper house in the Senate, pointing out that what they saw there was management issues in the parliament. You being a senator, being a member of parliament there for a long time, Chris, what do you make of what's happening there? What's your take on that?
Well, you know, it is disappointing what is happening there and what is happening in terms of procedural issues and administrative issues to some extent. And I believe, you know, a lot of these things fall under the ambit of the Speaker and the President of the Senate and the Speaker of the House. They are responsible for ensuring that what happens in terms of papers and documents and process, because there is rules on what you could do and what you cannot do. And the Prime Minister cannot get up and say he adjourned in Parliament or he expected to be adjourned for whatever reason and set a date without having consultations. That is not how the House and the Senate and the Parliament operates. You need to consult with the opposition and the other members of Parliament if it's also convenient for them to do, and then you get a date that works where everybody is comfortable.
It's not because you have the majority that you rule.
No.
Because that's what the Prime Minister said, actually, in his response. He said, look, they know we have the majority, so it's going to go that way anyway, so what's the big deal?
Yeah, and that's not how the Parliament operates. The Parliament, you have to give the same weight of respect to the people who are not in government, and you consult with them. I kept saying in the last time we speak, the leader of government business, the Speaker of the House, or the President of the Senate, and of course the clerk are the ones responsible for ensuring that the Parliament runs efficiently and everybody is given an open voice to have a say. That is what it's about. The debate, not because you're in government, you are more important than the one in the Parliament member in opposition. You will have the majority of the vote because you're in government. But that don't mean when you're debating that you have more importance or relevance than me. And that is how it must be done. And the Speaker and this President needs to ensure that that is maintained at all times.
Chris, I want to put you on the spot a little bit too. I mean, we saw the conversation between the Prime Minister and the Speaker of the House and the excuses made. And what do you make of the Speaker of the House?
I don't think the Speaker, Mr. Cato, is handling his job very well, unfortunately. And this is not the first blunder. There have been other blunders. And I think the Prime Minister in his response was frustrated at this as well. It came out in his body language and his tone, you know, and how he addressed the Speaker on this issue. So obviously Mr. Cato leaves a lot to be desired in terms of his management and handling of the Parliament, in particular the lower house. So these are things, you know, there's a lot of training that you have to speak at and to maintain a certain amount of decorum. And Mr. Cato seems to not be losing that part of his job in terms of what is happening.
Finally, Chris, the dumping in Calavini continues, you know, because week after week you pass there, it's increased. Where is the authorities on this? I mean, why is this allowed to happen in broad daylight, in public thoroughfare?
We've all seen it who travels that road. The police have seen it. The police is not happy. The last set of dumping that took place encroached on the road and it was narrowing the road. And that road is a highly trafficked road. And here we are having this illegal dumping. We haven't heard a word from the PPA, the Public Authority, Physical Planning Authority. Nothing can come. Nobody have visited, put up a sign or go on the radio and say, and I want to take it to another level now in a sense. I think none of our media houses are paying attention as well. MTV, GBN, the various media houses should go down there with their camera crew, get a person from the public authority, interview them and ask them if this is something acceptable and what we're doing. We look into backfill and dump, and there's a river that is very important in the back that takes water off from St. Paul's coming down.
This doesn't suit the image as pure Grenada, does it?
And unfortunately, when the first set of dumping happened, where they're selling breakfast or what they're selling now, and they concrete that area, it started high up, and now we just feel we could just dump and do anything. And I don't understand our
So we're asking the media to get there, take a look.
Take a look and get people understanding of whether we as a people are going to accept that.
Reasonable. Chris, we have to take a short break. We're going to come back. Viewers, stay with us. We'll be right back.
Laboratories, providing quality care and expertise. Fit for life and allied laboratories. See our in-house doctors and our pharmacies. Get expert care and quality tests. When it comes to your health, you deserve the best. Fit for life and allied laboratories. We're taking care of Grenada.
Greater convenience, smarter control. That's the power of myaccount.grenlec.com.
Pay your electricity bill online.
Submit service requests. View your billing history, and with e-billing, going paperless has never been simpler.
Sign up at myaccount.grenlec.com for access anytime, anywhere.
Welcome back, viewers, to MTV Community Forum. Chris, you recently came through the Morris Bishop International Airport. And we know also that only, I think, last month or recently, there was an official opening of the multi-million improvement dollars to the international airport. Tell us a bit about your experience in using the airport and what.
Two things I want to touch on quickly on the airport.
Okay.
The airport had, a few months ago, decided to increase the charge for the car park.
Yeah.
And it met with a lot of resistance. They backed off, but they now put it back on. I just came out from the airport today, and after 24 hours and a couple of hours, my charge was almost $60 for being in the car park. No. Years ago when the car park started, you had an automatic bar, you got your ticket out of the thing. Now we're employing somebody to do that. We haven't brought back the bar, but yet they're charging more money for the use of the car park.
And you have the same entrance and exit.
They build one on the side and then using it. So the question becomes, why am I being charged for more to park there and there's no facilitation of facilities for the park? Now you're employing somebody, that's not a bad thing, but do we really need it? So that's one. We did this extension there of the fingers, I call them, 3 fingers that they call them air bridges, that normally will facilitate jets when they come in, they come out. You made a jet on the door, and
Yeah.
you walk off and you
Yeah.
come on. That was handed over to the airport authority, and up to this day, they are not operational because of issues that allegedly I'm hearing is happening. First one is it's not air conditioned. The second one is that when they turn on the power to use the air bridges, it disrupts the power in the entire airport. And the third one, of course, the design of the air bridges does not facilitate the aircrafts that come, the size of the aircrafts that come to Grenada on a regular basis. It's apparently built for bigger aircraft and so on. So you have to ask yourself, where were the consultants? Who were the consultants on that project for the airport authority? How could we have a builder, in this case the Chinese, come in, sign a contract, multi-million-dollar contract to do these fingers? We have it and we can't use it. And if you, something as basic as power, how could we not, what is the board of the airport authority answers to these questions? For the reason that the air bridges are not operational. How could we not understand the power consumption of these air bridges, the three of them, and how it's going to affect what happens at the airport? And the airport cannot be without power because of air traffic control and what's happening. So,
and I think I understand why you have additional fees, whether it's parking fees or other fees, because the airport now has to generate the revenue to service the loan, Chris.
well, service the loan for what reason, and we can't use it? Because we can't get the flow of people that we want from the air bridges and the efficiency required.
Okay.
You understand? So,
Chris, finally, I'm not going back to the question of the militarization of the region, but I came upon an old clipping, an old newspaper of Morris Bishop, where he addressed the question of the zone of peace. And he made this address at the Queen's Park on March 13, 1980. So this is 1 year into the revolution. And he said, very short, he said, in our view, first of all, comrades, we believe very firmly that the Caribbean Sea must be recognized, regarded, and respected in practice as a zone of peace. We believe that this is fundamental. In our view, he said, in our view is that military task force and air and sea patrols of our region must be outlawed. We believe that military bases and installations must be removed from the territories of Latin America and the Caribbean countries that do not want them. The people of the region must be free from aggressive military harassment by any military power. There must be an end to the Monroe Doctrine and to all other doctrines, including the most recent one aimed at perpetuating interventionism and backyardism in our region. I just note this, Chris, that how much, 40 plus years ago, that our leaders were making that point.
yeah.
And the
and
same
the
thing
point still
remains.
holds today. nothing
Point
wrong
still
with
holds
that.
today.
Yeah, but it's how you get it.
How you get it. So, Chris, we want to move on to the main thing that we've been talking about. As Grenada prepares its 2026 national budget, we again turn our attention to the question of priorities and what matters most for our development and for our people and for our economy. So tonight we want to look beyond the headlines to examine how the budget's prepared, who's consulted, and how effective the process really is. And so, Chris, let's begin by, of course, looking at you've been in Parliament, and I always bring out that experience you bring here. You understand budgets. Try to walk us through how national budgets are actually prepared in Grenada. What's that process is like?
So, first of all, a budget is a document that gives the government the authority to spend through its various votes for its various departments and ministries. So it is a document that by law and by constitution must be done and prepared. The preparation, of course, is handled through the budget department in the Ministry of Finance. And they will look at the trends, look at what is happening, and select the best financial ways to deal with some of these things. Of course, the government comes in with its politics and its policies on sectors that they want to give priority to, and allocations in terms of funding. And then you have to understand where the funding is coming from, how it's going to be funded. So you could have a budget with surpluses or one with deficits. Because you have expenditure that you have created, and you have to maintain salaries, for example. Public service salaries must be paid on time and in full. And you cannot not meet that thing. You have police, you have hospitals, you have a lot of public servants that needs to be serviced, teachers and so on. So you look at expenditure, you look at revenues, and you decide on priorities based on the priorities will normally come from the throne speech. That is Governor General, who is given the throne speech essentially by the government, which will highlight the sectors that they want to prioritize. So that is generally how it is done. And then you meet with the people in consultation.
That's a consultation. So, Chris, so I want to ask you a question about the consultation, this public consultation. In your experience, how genuine are they? Are they meaningful inputs or more symbolic exercise? I mean, really?
The question is, the answer to that is both, symbolic and they do take on some of the issues that come up at the consultations. And they don't, because imagine the government have their priorities where they want to go, and you go in a consultation and you get 40 things from the consultations. You can't take 40. You listen, and you will take 2 or 3 out of the 40. So it reduces the impact of the consultations from that point of view. But they also, it gives you the consultation is important to hear from government how they have performed in various sectors.
Well, that's the point, Chris. How?
When they meet with the private sector, for example,
yes, right.
They will put up a PowerPoint. They will tell you the areas that they have had success. They will show you the revenues in terms of what they budget and in trends from the last year. So it gives you an understanding from the private sector. So the private sector may come out and say, we want lower taxes. Government will say, we can't consider it based on the performance and what has been happening environmentally and otherwise. So it gives parties who attend the consultations an understanding of the challenges, the positives and the negatives that the government would have felt. So that is important as well. You need to educate the population on what is happening.
Are you satisfied with the level of and the question is, how credible is the budget if you don't have clear reporting on what was achieved the previous year?
And that is something that we have spoken about years when I was there, because remember, a budget is the best estimate. That's what the word budget means. It's not that is dire figures.
Yeah, exactly.
And your hope that when you put out the expenditure, you find money to meet the expenditure.
Exactly.
It's a hope.
It's a projection.
Right.
And
so you will put policies and things in place to achieve the revenues that you want so that you can meet the expenditures that you have budgeted for. Right. So that is the first assumption that you make. And you must have errors, plus or minus, or what we call now upside and downside risks to what is going to happen. So the ordinary man needs to understand that. Not because I put $5 to spend in the budget, that means I will spend it because I may not get the money to spend the $5.
So Chris, from what you've seen, what do you think would have been the key, or what should be the key development priorities that should shape this 2026 budget?
And before I get there, I want to say that one of the things that is lacking in public sector budgeting is a review of what you started out budgeting for 2025. And how successful have you been in achieving those things.
Point. And
in the private sector, we have to do that and adjust budgets. If you're going to meet a budget in 2025, what is the reasons, what is the changes you're making to do base year 2026?
So you do an evaluation.
And
assessment.
That doesn't come out when the budget is presented. You have the document that's for budgeted expenditure and revenue and expenditure. That is presented with all its votes in all the ministries and so on. And you spend a lot of time talking about that, and of course the Minister of Finance makes his presentation and so on, based on the theme and all of that. So it has that, but when it get down to why we not performing in agriculture, for example, right? Agriculture seems as the worst ministry now in the ministry, in the government. It is poorly staffed. When you hear the issue with fisheries, and what happened and the reason they give for not dealing with the request, they don't have the right staffing. So, and when you look at farm roads and all the other issues that happen in agriculture, pest and disease and so on, you get a sense that we throw up our hands in the air and say we do nothing in agriculture. And here, this is a country that have excellent value-added products in nutmeg and in cocoa, and everything seems to be failing around agriculture. And what is happening with the value added?
Chris, as you mentioned that too, because I heard, the Prime Minister has this program that he does, privately, a podcast or whatever it is. But he was making a comment, I think it might have been, this was happening at TAMCC, there were young people around, and he was making a point that, agriculture is important, yes, but we need to weigh the investment in agriculture versus an investment somewhere else. And, I understand that, but we have to see agriculture in a deeper sense, Chris, and as an important sector, critical sector from a food security point of view. Because, for example, if there's a war in the region now, there's no planes or there's no boats that have come in. But we shouldn't wait until a crisis, and we always see that. So we have to see agriculture, regardless of what by important, we have to allocate a certain quantum to this for our food security.
Our allocations to agriculture over the last 5 years or more in previous government and this for agriculture has been woefully dismal and inadequate. So you can't talk food security. You can't talk independence of a country of 51 years and you don't have some measure of food security.
Because, Chris, 80% of our foods are imported. And we have, we talked about this several times, the question of policy. And as we on this, because, and we're staying on the budget, Chris, because this was a budget statement made last year, because one of the things you have to do, and I don't think even the politicians, the opposition do that, you have to review, you have to take a look at the last budget statement and compare it and say, well, so let's pull out M&IB, for example. And at the last budget statement, it was very clear from the Minister of Finance that before the third quarter of this year, that M&I would be established, that we'll have strategic partnership, that it will be up and running. Hasn't happened. And the excuse that, and what we heard, what was causing the late, a year ago, remains the same excuse and the same reason why it's not. So it's a major issue for production and farming here, particularly from the marketing point of view. So we're going to come back to agriculture, Chris, but I just think, it's important that we lay that. But of course, the key question there was, how do we develop our priorities? How should what priorities should shape our budget?
Let's take it that from the point of view. We just had a preliminary report done by the IMF.
Yes.
Talking about the country and its growth and its sectors and so on. IMF indicated in their report that construction is the lead sector, followed by tourism, and probably education. So they didn't mention that, but education services also, with SGU coming back on stream and its contribution to GDP. The estimate is that we'll end the year at around 4.4% of GDP growth, which is a good thing. But when you look at the prediction in the medium term, it's dropping in the 2.3 and 2. And really and truly, if GDP is a measure of the value of goods and services, we will be woefully, 4% is normally a place where you want to be and above, right? So it presents challenges to the government when you look at those figures in terms of how they're going to meet the expectations and their priorities. So government will look at construction, for example. Let's take construction. Construction, you can safely say in Grenada is booming, right? And there may be various reasons for that. People may have a renewed confidence in this government's handling of the economy, and the banks are very liquid, interest rates are very competitive, so more people are engaging in building, more people are engaging in investment of various types, whether it's vehicles or whatever, or businesses. So that is a good thing for the economy, and it keeps the economy bubbling. So nothing is wrong with that, and you could commend the government for that, and I think the IMF has said that. They use the word comfortable in terms of the economy, and some people may not find that it's not robust. And they use that, they say it's comfortable. So you have to take that with a pinch of salt and really understand where the priorities. I can't see government moving away from construction based on the projects that they are signaling that they want to continue to engage in the development of schools. They're spending a lot of money in schools and rehabilitation. Road infrastructure is going to be a big thing. So the PSIP program for the government is going to center heavily on construction. Is
Project Polaris part of this? The IMF mentioned that, and it's
a few times in the report.
In the report. But Chris, and let's look at the IMF report. What were some of the major risks to watch that the report highlighted?
Well, I mean, the first one is that if you base your growth on construction as a major sector, let's take what is happening now. Construction is a short-term way of creating spending power to the average man, but you have to ensure it trickles down as much as possible. So we have a lot of trucks moving on the road in construction, but
Yeah.
is the ordinary man getting his fair share of truckage? We have huge trucks.
Well, they're too big for the roads, Chris, and
Right.
they're contributing to the damage and the destruction
Correct, but
of
they're
the roads.
owned by big companies,
That's
and you're
correct,
not
yeah,
sure
yeah.
how far down
Yeah,
the chain it
yeah,
filters. So
yeah,
I'm just
yeah,
saying that.
yeah,
But
yeah.
construction is a good short-term remedy to keep the economy bubbling.
Yeah.
However, medium to
Yeah.
long, it is not, because
Yeah.
the construction boom will fall off.
Yeah.
And here then comes the argument of productive sectors, agriculture, services, right, education services. What is happening there? Creative economy, the blue economy. Are we developing and putting priorities in these areas that could give us value added and repeat productive issues in here? For example, value add in chocolate. We are very far along with cocoa, the best cocoa in the world, and the quality, and we have 5 or 6 chocolate producers in Grenada.
At least
But
5,
we
yeah.
have a major fiasco with GCNA and what is happening in Diamond and what's going on in
True.
Mahan.
Significant. Yeah.
Significant. And here it is again. We as a country would come in a budget for 2026 and look to say we ain't changing these actors on these boards and get rid of what the construct is. This government, the government before, everybody
So it's not
afraid to
something
touch
that
it.
started now.
No.
Yeah, it's been on.
And we need to come to grips with some of these things. Anyway, so when you look at construction, and tourism is going to lead the sectors, and I expect for the 2026 budget, it's going to continue to lead. However, fisheries and agriculture, which is so important to us, wasn't even mentioned in the IMF report as a sector that...
The agriculture was not mentioned.
Not at all. Another risk that is not mentioned at all in the IMF report and is left to see is how is climate change going to affect
Yeah.
tourism,
Yeah.
agriculture, and what is going on there.
But they did mention they warned that one major hurricane could erase years of progress.
Correct.
How exposed is
Vulnerabilities.
Grenada
That's right.
as of vulnerabilities, but the climate change issue. Chris, we have to take a short break, so we'll come back. Viewers, stay with us. We'll be right back.
Fit for Life and Allied Laboratories, providing quality care and expertise. Fit for Life and Allied Laboratories, see our in-house doctors and our pharmacies. Get expert care and quality tests. When it comes to your health, you deserve the best. Fit for Life and Allied Laboratories, we're taking care of Grenada.
Christmas comes with more choices. Red curtains or white curtains, new paint or new furniture. Christmas dinner, that's a must. One ham or maybe 2. Decisions. With financing from Corp Bank, more is possible. Get up to $50,000 and make more of your dreams come true this Christmas. Plus, get an opportunity to win gifts and prizes. Christmas does come with more. More smiles, more togetherness, more love. And at the end of it all, it's more than worth it. This is your season for more with Corp Bank. Visit our website for more details. Terms and conditions apply.
Dreams come true with a Corp Bank loan.
For 35 years, one name has stood with us. Through the storms and sunshine, we've been by your side. Whether you're on the road, at sea, on site, or at home, with Grenadian General Insurance, confidence comes standard. It's never been a better time to renew and update for added benefits. Join us in celebrating 35 years of safeguarding what matters most. Grenadian General Insurance, 35 years strong. Visit Grenadian General Insurance on Scott Street, St. George's. Call us at 440-2434 or visit grenadiangeneral.gd to get the coverage you need.
Welcome, my viewers. Chris, before the break, of course, we're discussing the budget and budgetary preparation and priorities. Chris, are we seeing enough policy effort to diversify and support small business and agriculture? Are we seeing this? And do we expect this in this budget coming up?
Well, in the previous,
given where the priorities are.
In the previous budget, they did give allocations for spending, I think it was $1 million to help with small business and the development of small business and what is happening there.
Yeah.
But, you know, part of the small business challenge is having documentation and the right kind of information to get financing and what you do with the financing. A lot of small business and rural development need help in those areas. And as we know, rural business development creates a lot of employment. So it is linked to employment. So you want to give focus there as well, whether it's through fisheries, whether it's through pepper sauce, whatever you do in chocolate baking. So there are these concerns that the government needs to look at and see how they're going to facilitate. At the same time, you need to ensure that social programs in our country, whether we're doing Imani, whatever we're doing for the youths, what is going to happen with our youthful population, how we're going to encourage them to go into businesses that could give them some appetite of, you know, hope that you could do something on your own and you could be successful and so on. So there's a lot of those considerations that needs to be met and needs to be considered. Then I think one of the biggest things for 2026 is whether this is going to be an election budget or not.
Do you believe it will be?
Well, it depends. The Prime Minister have until 2027 to call elections.
Yes.
But the pundits are indicating that it may be called earlier. If the budget is presented in a certain way, then we'll understand whether it's an election budget and where the focus is.
So we'll know on the presentation.
Correct.
But Chris, you made a point about the rural economy, particularly youth employment. The Minister for Youth earlier this week with the Manis, there's a program for young males, and she was saying that out of 400 that started, 50%, less than 50% graduated. So the dropout was, and that's the standard we've seen with young males.
Did you say whether it's males or females?
Male. This is the male program. It has a name.
Oh, just the male program.
Yeah, male upliftment. But Chris, recently I saw of course we know labor will drive the economy. Labor is responsible for raising your GDP. Recently I saw an advert looking for, in a major project taking place, looking for labor, whether it's plumbers or contractor.
There's a construction company.
Chris, we have a labor issue.
We do.
What was your take on this?
And you know, labor issue is also tied to minimum wage that was done. Positive thing by the government to raise the minimum wage. But that also has effect down the road as well in terms of how many people can enter the workforce and get. We have a major issue of labor and labor shortage and attitude to work in this country.
You're linking it with attitude also.
That's correct, because you have guys that will come on a construction project, do a first fortnight work, and you see them again. And they'll tell you, boy, well, I'm making enough money to buy my sneakers, so I'm good. And there is no issue of how we deal with that attitude. And when they come on the project, or they come on a project to work for you, the time they waste and how they approach the work is significantly below par. We hear the government talking about bringing in Cubans to assist with the labor shortage, particularly in agriculture and in construction. It's happening in tourism as well. It's not universal to those sectors. It's not, these sectors are still being challenged to get the right people in the right positions. And probably Grenada, disappointingly, did not join the free movement of people with the other CARICOM countries that did it, Barbados, Belize, and Dominica, I think.
Yes.
And we didn't join. And that is disappointing because people could freely move to these countries, engage in work, and follow just the same mandates as well.
So are we likely to hear policy on this going forward?
Well, I hope so.
You hope so.
The thing with the Cubans.
Yeah.
And if you go back to health and Polaris, and what was in the...
So let's go there. Let's go there, Chris.
And what happened in the IMF report. The IMF is very, when you read it, suspect that this project is going to give the kind of benefits that we're expecting. The concept is beautiful. Don't get me wrong. I support the concept. But remember, in Grenada, we're speaking about developing primary health care. And there's a lot still to be done in primary health care. Here you come into this project with Polaris that is going to cost $250+ million to put on a hospital, brand new hospital, on 10 acres of the 84 acres. And you have another 74 acres to be developed for the teaching aspect of the hospital, the wellness aspect of the hospital, wellness and so on. Government doesn't tend to spend money there. They tend to invite investors to partake.
Yes.
And so Polaris, let's take the construction side and what is happening in construction. If you put in a $250 million structure, just to build the structure alone, and the cost of that, then you have to equip the structure and you have to resource it with the necessary human resources to make it efficient and to attract people. Do we need better healthcare? Of course we do. Is it going to filter down to the right? We don't have NHI in place yet. So how is the ordinary man going to access Polaris and what is going to happen? There's a lot of questions.
There's a lot of questions.
Right.
And even the location for a general hospital too has raised question. Imagine someone coming from the West Coast, let's say Guava, and going to the hospital and to deal with the traffic and getting to an emergency.
Why should they leave Guava when we have a brand new facility in Guava?
In Guava, but it's not staffed as far as I know. So Chris,
there's a
lot of issue there. But Chris, and financing is an issue of the budget, and I want to go there briefly. Of course, the government recently announced the household bond, $5 million, an opportunity for Grenadians to invest. I think it's paying almost 5% per annum. 4.2%. This is good. But one of the questions is, and of course this is the income for the budget, one of the things you've raised, and I think that's, I'm throwing it back at you, what's the likely use of this $5 million? What recommendation you have?
I am suspecting it is going to be presented in the budget.
Yeah.
The bond was opened, I think, on the 1st of November. So we're not sure what is the uptake on the bond by the locals. I think 500 was the least amount of money you could seek in the bond. So there is a good thing for offering different investment instruments to our people so that they could understand that they could get something out of the bond. An investment, because we have limited investment instruments. But I did suggest in a program prior that some of this money of the $5 million must be allocated to development of rural enterprise business as we through the GDP or whatever, and develop the rural side of the economy that way. But I want to go back on something, Byron, that the construction sector, if we have it as a priority for 2026, we must address the issue of capacity and bureaucracy. All right? The implementation rate for 2025 by the government has been disastrous, in my view. When you think about the mantra of transformative projects for 2025, I cannot, in memory, think about what project they implemented as transformative. From a construction point of view, I want to be clear.
Yeah.
Right? And the issue of capacity in terms of equipment to effect projects on time and in place, human resources, do we have the right amount of engineers that could facilitate the development of transformative project? Polaris would fall under that as well. And of course, the financing and what is happening there. And the bureaucracy aspect, I always say we get confused with bureaucracy and efficiency and what is happening. So if a letter goes before a PS that needs a signature in 1 week and the PS is taking 4 weeks, what we want is that somebody in a ministry of MIT to go down to the PS desk and get the letter signed if we need 4 signatures,
Yeah.
and have that done in 4 weeks or 1 week, compared to change in the bureaucracy. Government needs a bureaucracy. It is constitutional in terms of the reporting.
But
and
efficiency.
But the efficiency aspect is what I'm talking about.
Chris, I want you to give a closing comments on a number of things. I want you to talk about the IMF report in terms of talking about the 2.2% inflation, which sounds very low. And I want you to combine that as what you see as a risk in terms of to the budget, in terms of impending war or likely war around us. What are the likely scenarios you see and concerns that you have?
Let me start with the IMF report. I think the IMF report was a good report for the government in that it signaled that there are strong aspects of the economy. They did signal the non-banking area that is an issue at risk. And I believe that comes from the compliance issues with small credit unions and other operators in the non-bank area, so it's something that needs to be looked at. Statutory bodies and the debt and the contingent liabilities have always been an issue, and those are some of the risks that will factor, I hope, in the 2026 budget and how the government plans to address that. But I think the bigger challenge is the environment and the speed in which the environment is changing. And if this war, or this whatever the U.S. is planning for Venezuela, happens, and we see the posturing now of Russia and the Chinese on the Venezuelan side. This could be significant for us, as I said before, whether food comes in by ships, and ships may think, the area is dangerous, can we afford this out? Aircraft in terms of tourism and tourist boats, what is going to happen to tourism, and obviously fishing, and what is going on in the fishing industry.
That's right.
And the challenges that we're going to face. So the budget is going to, this particular budget for 2026 is going to face some interesting risks going forward. And in the medium term, and if we were to do a Polaris project and we get financing of 250 million, it's not grant, it's loan. And then you have to manage the issue of debt to GDP ratio. And remember, we have suspended the fiscal rules under this current situation.
Up to next year?
Well, that is what the IMF is asking that it comes back, because the primary balance was suspended. In particular,
following the barrel.
Because the government needs more leeway to do something and spend money. And then they're going to challenge the government. The spending of the money hasn't happened efficiently in Karakou, the rebuilding process, and in some parts of the north.
So, Chris, I worry about this point you make about I know time is up, but certainly ending it, the likelihood of a war and how it's likely to affect us, and what the government should be honest and open with us in terms of as a risk, and what preparation as a country we should.
Byron, just to say that one of the biggest assets we have here is education, so SGU in particular. And the amount of students from the US in SGU.
Exactly,
And we don't want to open a situation where we put that at risk because of some thing that the US is planning. So it's big issues for us. SGU contributes almost 25% of GDP. 24 plus. So it is not simple in that sense of the challenges the budget will face in terms of the upside and downside risks. So there is. I wouldn't like to be the Minister of Finance in the present 2026. I think things are changing so quickly around him that is even difficult.
It's a dynamic situation.
And the response to those things, you could only hope and pray that certain things are maintained in terms of stability. And I want to say that I think the government's move to not be so dependent on North-South trade and assistance and look into Africa and Central and South America is a good move. Because we need to bolster our friends.
All the options.
And look at all the options. Remember, USA no longer exists. And that was a major area of conduit for aid for us. So our government have done some good things from that point of view. And that is something we need to highlight as well.
Viewers, that's all the time we have. Chris. Viewers, thank you very much for being with us. We want to thank our technical staff and others at MTV. We'll see you next week, same time, same place. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.